Breath framework. B, begin where you are. R, reclaim your power. E, excavate your core values. A, allow, not control. T, through, not around. And H, healing. The breath framework, a way of life.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Soul Center Experience live show. So you want to say hi? All right. Someone wants to say hello. Say hi, Evie.
Hi.
This is Evie. Everybody knows her. She's saying hello. We had quite a day today. My guest is not here yet, so you're going to hear me babbling for a little while. All right, go back to what you were doing.
Bye.
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 So this is today so far, just in case anybody wants to know how frantic it was. It was a 4.5-hour oil change and a mouse in my house. A mouse in my house that we named LMNOP, Lieb. So LMNOP, Lieb. That's the mouse's name. I don't know if he's dead. I have traps. I'm scared. I didn't want to, hi, Kenny. I didn't want to kill him because I think it's inhumane. I wanted to put him back outside, but I don't know how to catch him. So I think there's some bait in traps, but they're not like mean traps. They're like catch him and then I can put him outside traps, but I don't want to do any of it. This is not my forte. This is not what I'm good at. If we're talking about like things like Annie's strengths, as far as my soul center goes, it's not rodents. There's my girl right there. She's here. Don't worry. Everyone chill. Mandy Morris is here. We're talking about excavate your core values and the breath framework tonight. Mandy, I don't know if she just heard me say there's a mouse in my house, which by the way, I have my sneakers on, but I'm so scared. He's so cute. He's this big, like this big, and he's gray. He's not an ugly mouse, one of those ugly brown ones, but like he's legitimately like in my kitchen underneath something. And I think he got in because by accident, one of the kids left the front door open all night long the other day. So I think that's how he got in. Luckily, we live in a nice neighborhood, so I didn't have to worry about a invasion artist, an imposter. What's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. My brain is 4 hours waiting for a car to get an oil change today. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it, but I'm keeping my foot up underneath the dining room table that I'm sitting at because I'm scared that little LMNOP is going to run by. Oh, this is my life, everyone. Anyway, the beautiful, the wonderful, the fabulous, the incredible Mandy Morris is here, and I'm going to bring her in. Hi. It's been a day. This was supposed to be, just to make you aware, this was supposed to be a very, very few and far between 3/4 of a day off. I had a couple things to do, but I was taking 3/4 of a day off with my children. They're still out of school, they're in between camp and school, so they're home. And I don't take days off. So this was like a big deal for me. And I'm like, I'll just run in real quick, get an oil change. Well, so 4 hours later, I was like begging for them to give me my car. And so I finally got my car back, and I don't know, they did all kinds of stuff to it, even though it's a new car. I know you both great creators. Thanks, Jeremy. Good to see you. Thanks for popping on. We're talking about my day so far. And we have a little visitor in the house, a little mouse named LMNOP, Lieb. So he's in the house, and I'm scared he's going to scurry by my feet. But because I won't put up.
I won't name the mouse.
Yeah, I would.
You're not supposed to name the rodents.
This is my problem.
It makes it harder to kill or get rid of or whatever.
I don't want to kill him. I feel like that's inhumane. That's so mean. He's really just a baby and he's cute. And I just want him I don't want him in my home.
Right.
So.
Right.
So there's a small delay. I don't know if you hear it, but there's a small delay with us. So I'm going to try to be patient and talk slowly. Is it your Wi-Fi? Is it probably mine? It's probably mine.
I don't know. It could be mine. I'm showing okay, but
me too. But you never do know. I think those little buttons that say how your Wi-Fi is doing are just lies. They're just total lies. So give him a relocation package. That's a great idea. I want someone else not me. I want someone else to catch him and let him go. He doesn't need to be killed. But this is where I don't like being, the solo parent.
Do we need to walk through some breath framework? Is that
here's what we need to walk through, Mandy. I need to learn how to take a friggin' day off. Like it's nothing, nothing is going to crumble because I walked away from the computer. For
right. I mean, life of entrepreneurs though, like, do we ever really take day off?
It's true.
Let alone you're a mom and all of that. It's like,
it's true.
It's nice in theory.
Right. I was like, I'll spend the whole day. Like I'll be with the kids. Meanwhile, I was at the oil change place. Anyway. Yeah. So we're talking about breath framework tonight. We're talking about excavating your core values. But before we get to that, I would love to hear about you. I want our guests, our audience to hear about you. Just give me like a background. Tell me about you. I like to just kind of throw it out there. We've actually never really done this, me and you. Where it's just one-to-one. I mean, we've met and had meetings together and done a ton of breath framework stuff together and for the company, but we haven't done it. So let's just pretend like this is a one-to-one. Okay.
So I guess I'll start professionally what my background is, and then we can go from there. But I've been in private practice since 2014. I'm co-founder and co-clinical director of Mosaic Counseling Group. I work with a lot of different types of individuals. I'd say the only thing that I don't really work with is personality disorders and addiction as a primary diagnosis. I'm a trained EMDR clinician, which is primarily a trauma therapy. And I do a lot with that. I'm an EMDR consultant in training as well. And I do a lot of corporate psychology and leadership therapy. I kind of consider myself like a champion for mental health. I strive real hard to break the stigma that we place on ourselves around it without even realizing it a lot of times. And so, especially over the past couple of years, I've been connecting with some major corporate companies. I've been doing podcasts all over the world. I did some work in the music industry with various producers and rappers and singers and songwriters. Got to be a part of a recent docuseries on 4 Days to Save the World. So I kind of got my hand in a lot of different things. I got to write a chapter in a book that's now an international bestseller book. And part of that gets into my story. I was married for 7 years to a person who ended up being diagnosed with a narcissistic personality disorder, and done a lot of my own trauma and healing work around that. And so in this self-healing book, I write about that, and I include some EMDR techniques as a tool for people to use.
Can you tell about a little bit more about EMDRs for people that don't know about it?
Yeah. So it's like this really long, weird name, but it stands for eye movement, desensitization, and reprocessing. And essentially what they have found is that, it's like the research people, right? Francine Shapiro, she's the one who really discovered the fact that when you, your eyes move back and forth, like almost as if you're looking from one corner of the room to the other corner of the room. Or in her case, it was tree to tree on one of her walks. She noticed that distressing thoughts and memories became less distressing. And essentially what they have found is that when you're working on some sort of trauma that you've been through and you incorporate these different eye movements, it actually helps your brain process the information in a way that mimics the same mechanism that happens when you're in REM sleep cycle, where your mind organizes information and gets rid of what it doesn't need.
Okay.
And essentially when we go through traumatic experiences in life and it's not been healed, it stays stuck in this like lower level part of the brain, which is the anxiety part of the brain, where when you think about that distressing memory, you might still feel a visceral reaction to it, right? You might still feel your heart rate go up. You might hear or smell something that is connected to that, and then it's like you're back there. It's because it's stayed stuck in this part of the brain that's essentially kind of been bruised or damaged because of the traumatic event. And EMDR essentially helps your mind process past the distress point, files it away in the correct part of the brain, so that when you think about it, you can't erase what's happened to you, but it feels more like fact than it does this emotional charge.
Got it.
And it helps clear up any negative beliefs connected to that traumatic event. For instance, you know, we all operate out of our belief systems. And when we go through difficult experiences in life, we tend to form either an adaptive, helpful belief about ourselves, or we can form a really maladaptive, negative, not helpful belief. Like, for instance, here, this is one that I share a lot with like clients because it's pretty benign, but it wasn't at the time, because this was like third grade, right? So, and I still remember this memory very vividly in third grade. I was like this like lanky, awkward looking kid, didn't have braces yet, hadn't met like, you know, a hair straightener, big old glasses, not many friends. And I remember there was these two girls who I would hang out with all the time. And I don't know what got into me one day. I think it was maybe I was like being tired of being left out or something like that. But I asked this one girl, I was like, how come you hang out with her more than you do me? And she, like, without like missing a beat, she looks me dead in the eye and she says, well, because she's prettier than you. And like just started crying, and they like left me on the
Well, aren't you laughing at them now?
Right.
Look at me now, bitches.
Yeah. Well, so you know, and I was internalized.
It's terrible.
Yeah. You know, girls are mean.
So mean.
Yeah. But so, like, looking back and processing, you know, I can see how I developed this belief of I'm not good enough, I'm not pretty enough. So at any time I had a social interaction that I perceived as not going well, it would always go back to that negative belief that happened, right? And we do this when we don't go back and process through our beliefs, or what drives our emotion and what drives our behavior. So I was able to track back some of my people-pleasing behavior to a belief that was never true about me to begin with, which, you know, I can look back now on that and reframe that and, you know, see the difference in all of that. But with EMDR, it really helps your mind, the logic and the body aligns. It's like you can know that you're capable, you can know that you're good enough, you can know that you did the best you could, but it doesn't always feel that way when there's trauma involved. And so with EMDR, it really helps the mind-body connect because of how it accesses the logic and it takes out the distress of what's going on with the memory. So it's a very interesting technique. I use it for a lot of things other than trauma, but that's where the main research comes from.
Okay. Sorry to interrupt your story. I just wanted to make sure. Hold on. We have a couple comments. Hang on one second. Senor Hayasada Hayoko would like Kenny to pass the pepper because he's savoring the flavor of this positivity meal. Brad said that mean people stink, and he feels you completely. He was smart kid, glasses, thin, smart, and braces. Oh boy. Well, just so you know, I wasn't like, I didn't have glasses or wasn't like lanky or anything, and girls were really mean to me. Like,
yeah, they're the worst.
They're so mean. They were terrible for so many years.
Yeah,
I have the best.
I wish we were more like guys. We could just like fight it out and then be done with it.
Just be done. Yeah, or just not give a shit. Give a shit.
Right.
Ian wants to know, do you think narcissistic victim wives know if others are being victimized? Why I ask, I burnt 24 letters of bullying and the bully is happily married. Do they hide from the wife, or would wife be brainwashed for her own safety? I don't totally understand the question, but if you do, go for it.
So do you think narcissistic victim wives know if others are being victim? I mean, I think that depends on the level of awareness around their own abuse that they've experienced. You know, if you're not able to see, I mean, I don't know, it depends. If you're not able to see things within your own self, it can be hard to see that in others. However, that's not always entirely true. people stay in relationships that are abusive for lots of reasons. One of the biggest reason being cognitive dissonance. So what that is that our brain can't hold two conflicting beliefs, right? And so if the belief is that my spouse or significant other would never abuse me or couldn't hurt me or whatever, then you might find ways to rationalize bad behavior. Well, he or she was just stressed out that day, or at least they pay the bills, or maybe, maybe I stressed them out. So blah, 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 or whatever. And so because our mind can't hold two conflicting beliefs, we tend to rationalize things to fit that belief.
Sure.
And so I think, to answer that person's question, yes and no. They may be able to see the abuse in someone else, but still rationalize their own abuse that they experience. I know I did that for a long time,
Sure.
I can see in other people's relationships, or even as a therapist, certain things, but it's like, oh man, but that's happening to me too, And so once that level of self-awareness comes into play, then you're much, much more able to pick up on the red flags, not only for yourself, but for other people as well. So I don't know if it answers that guy's question or not, but
I think it did. So anyway, so tell me more. So EMDR, and then, all right. So tell me more about you.
I'm a poker player.
You are? Do you have a poker face? I have a terrible poker face. I'm the worst. Like, not that the poker players are good liars, but like I can't, you can see everything on my face all the time. Like, I don't have that face.
I play Texas Hold'em. Well, I used to play a lot. I'm huge into anything outdoors. I'm 2 belts away from a black belt in martial arts.
You are badass, girl. She's like, I know.
I have my moments. Gosh, what else? Yeah. I mean, I feel like I'm like I do art, I play guitar, but like all of that is all kind of mediocre. I feel like I'm like a jack of all trades in some areas. Like I can put my hands in a little bit of everything. But I just, I love what I do. And I am really excited about this new venture with you guys and the breathwork framework and leadership and all of that. I think being around a bunch of executives and leaders when I was on the 4 Days to Save the World show, that will be dropping Labor Day on Amazon.
Plug away.
Yeah, Amazon Prime. That being able to be official team support for that and to move into helping people on this kind of level versus my private practice clients. And what I mean by that is it's one thing to do one-on-one therapy with someone, and that work, I love that work. It's very sacred work to me. That will never change. But to go in and to help a company or help an organization through leadership and things like that, and to reach, people on some of these more systemic scales, it's really exciting for me.
Well, it's like, I understand completely. Like, I love one-to-one coaching. There's something so incredibly intimate and personal about what we do. And I mean, not to say, but like, I just, there's something so intimate about what we do with healing and helping. But then there's also something about transforming a culture at a company that is really a whole other level of healing.
Yeah.
Because it's the greatness that you can see in this tidal wave that comes through them when you're working on a big group versus one-to-one, which is amazing too. It's both.
Yeah. Well, I created a program that was for people trying to heal or break out of toxic relationships. And it's this 3-month program. And when I was creating it, I recognized a lot of similarities to what I was hearing from a lot of my clients who work in corporate, right? And a lot of things that people will put up with, with toxic bosses or in a toxic work environment. And the saying goes, you're married to your work, right? And so it really got me intrigued in, looking at patterns and looking at what's going on with leadership and culture and creating psychologically safe environments so that workplace can be more inclusive and things like that. And so it's intrigued me for a while, and it makes me really excited that more leaders are willing to look at their own stuff so that they can lead better, and they can create a healthier experience for everybody that they're working with, especially throughout what everyone's been through with COVID and lots of companies shutting down and then starting back up, and then there's grief involved, and there's all these things. And companies have not, we as humans have not been through a pandemic before, but
let alone
do that as a company as well, and to still be in somewhat of survival mode from like a brain standpoint while trying to move your company forward. It just comes with so many challenges. And so being able to come alongside and support and help and do this with you guys, it's, I don't know, I think it's going to help have a lasting impact.
Brad said breath framework has been the difference for me. Brad's my favorite poster boy, my favorite poster man for the breath framework. He has like come in guns like ready and locked and loaded and has just done the work, and it's just been incredible to watch. So
awesome.
is not the only one, obviously there's been many, but he is just like always.
Well, and the more people can share their experience and speak up about it, and the more it can become part of normal language, like, hey, I got to go to the doctor today. Hey, I'm meeting with my breathwork, coach or my therapist or whatever. And it's just normal, then there create less and less stigma around other people doing it.
Well, and I think you're exactly right. What the pandemic has brought, sadly, there was a pandemic to bring this, but what it's brought is just our awareness has skyrocketed as far as our emotional quotient and what we're doing in companies. For, a lot of them, I think a lot of companies and a lot of people are more aware, and they're like, what are we doing? Like, why are we not putting our people first? They're sort of just starting to see this. Yeah. So what I'm seeing is like, there's one-to-one people coming to us to get coached and have therapy, but there's also, now more companies are kind of going, wait a minute. We have to get to the personal side of things. Like, we have to get down to who these people are. What are their souls saying? What makes them them?
We're human first. Yeah.
Right. Like we just said, working with corporate leaders is the ability to have a larger ripple effect and completely shift the individual employees on all levels. It's a magical experience. It's true.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I'm so glad we work together, since we are in total alignment and totally agree on that. So I wanted to ask you about EMDR too. Do more, this is a random question that I just thought of while you were talking. Do more people come to you, or do people come to you and then you say, I think we need to do EMDR?
Some of both. There are the people who come specifically looking for EMDR who get referred to me specifically for that. I would say that happens a little bit more now than it used to. I think since Prince Harry and a couple other public figures have gone more public about the fact that they use EMDR and this is how it's helped them, it's creating a lot more awareness around it, which is great. But a lot of times I'll be with clients and, depending on what the situation is, I will suggest that we do EMDR if I think it's a good fit for them and a good tool for them, and they're in a place where they're ready to do it. And I always get these like crazy weird looks at first, and I literally have clients say to me, I think you're bullshitting me. What is this? And then we'll do it. And it just creates such relief so fast. And so once people are open to it, and it's not hypnosis, and there's nothing against hypnosis or anything like that, but it's not that you're fully in control and you're fully in the room still. And if the clinician, you have a good EMDR clinician who knows what they're doing, after session 1, you're going to feel immediate relief. There was it's on one of my posts from a while back, but essentially I showed a brain scan of a woman who was diagnosed with PTSD, and you can see on the scan almost most of her brain's like fully lit up, because with trauma we have overactivity in the brain. After 4 90-minute sessions of EMDR, you see the activity is almost gone down 50%, if not more, in activity, because the mind wants to heal itself, given the right tools and the right environment. And you're moving those traumatic memories out of the anxiety part of the brain, into the correct long-term memory part of the brain where it doesn't get activated all the time, the overactivity in the brain just starts to decrease and things start to normalize. And that's only after like 4 sessions. And so it's really amazing what it can do to help heal the mind. And our mind is always protecting ourselves, whether we do EMDR or not, dissociating, that's our mind protecting.
Yeah. I mean, even the things that it does to negatively affect you is protection.
But what used to help you to survive doesn't help you move forward and thrive anymore. And so when you can get with a therapist or a coach or whoever that you really connect with, and you have the right tools, healing is possible. I am very much against labels and even diagnosis. I think they're helpful so that we have terms and language to talk about with those things. But so much of that can become a person's identity. And it's not, I know that there's been a period in my time where I've been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. I don't have those symptoms anymore. I've done my own work around it. Not that I don't have my own anxieties and things like that still. And I'm very open, even like with my clients, like, hey, I'm a therapist who's in therapy still. Imagine that. I'm a human. And, and with that, it's a diagnosis isn't a life sentence. It can be reversed if you're willing to do your own work around it. There's healing. I am full belief that healing is completely possible. And the way our minds are designed and wired is you can see that's what it's meant to do. We're always meant to survive. It's always trying to heal. But if it's not given the right tools in the right environment, it's just going to operate out of old survival habits versus thriving habits
and behaviors. Kenny says he concurs. Labels are unnecessary. David said fascinating work that you do. Good night, Brad. Thank you for jumping on, guys. If you're having to jump off, let me ask you a question. You've talked about a bunch of stuff so far, just in the beginning of the show. Is safety one of your main core values?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, yeah. Safety, and freedom for sure.
I see that.
Yeah. I mean, it's so important. People don't feel safe. How are they you're not going to move forward because you're always going to be operating out of survival if there's not safety.
See, I think that safety has become one of my core values because for so long I wasn't safe.
Yeah.
It kind of became the core of me, something that I need, I want, I have to have. It makes up the fabric of me. Yeah. Freedom is absolutely, and we've talked about this, freedom is absolutely my overarching, which is personal freedom, me becoming me and being able to stand in my truth and be who I am and show up as me authentically is just by far my most important core value, and love. But safety to me just in the past year has become something that I've realized is very much at the crux of who I am.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that for a long time. And I think that's because I didn't realize how unsafe I felt for such a long time.
Yeah. No, that's such good a realization. And I can relate to that wholeheartedly. I think what I'm coming to realize is that how much I can create safety for myself, how much, no matter what is going on externally, that the more I stay aligned with myself and my intuitions, that creates safety.
Absolutely. I'm so with you on that.
Yeah. And so often I betrayed myself in certain ways by being overly compliant or, dismissing my own feelings about things. I mean, it can be in like these little ways, right? But the more, someone was asking me on a live show a few weeks ago, they're asking me like, what would my advice be about self-care, therapist Mandy? And it's like, I could give, and this goes back to the safety thing, but like I could give these, platitudes or these like, go exercise and
cookie cutter,
little cookie cutter answers. And, when I had to really think about what is it that I'm doing and how would I answer that from my heart? And it really went back to the fact of learning to no longer betray myself, even in the small things. Like if I want to say no to something, I say no to it. If I'm listening to myself, if I feel like I need to not answer my phone in the morning, but it's going to piss some people off. Or if I feel like I need to like even in these like little things, the more and more I learn to not betray myself, and I am living out of my intuition with things, the more safety I create for myself. And
well, the more power you reclaim, just
Mhm.
go back, and the more you are into and aligned with your core values.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Yeah. Well, and that goes back to like, so choosing values, it helps you find your way. You know, knowing what your values are helps you find your way in life, and it gives you peace, and it helps you navigate the tough situations. And if you're not sure what they are, and you know, and I feel like I'm always growing in my values and in my core values. I know what some of them are, and I can feel when I'm out of alignment with them. But
Totally.
when you know what they are for yourself individually, and even yourself as a leader in a company, then you always go back to, how do I navigate that? So if I'm someone who values safety and values freedom, and I'm confronted with a difficult situation, you know, I can go back to, okay, how do I operate out of those values right now? And I find it really important that people are able to align very specific behaviors to core values. Because we can say something's our value all day long, but if the behavior doesn't align with that, then we're going to feel the disconnect and the dissonance with it.
Yeah. And it just chips away. For so long, I lived like that, where I thought I was one way, or I wanted to be one way, and I was behaving in a different way. And it just chipped away at my soul slowly.
Yeah. Well, and the same thing in organizations is, you can say, my values are integrity, my values are honesty, my values, whatever it may be.
Exactly.
And then you have the people who are having the gossip meeting after the meeting, or you're having the people who are now, taking shortcuts around things, and they're not operating out of integrity. And so it's behaviorally out of alignment, even if the intent isn't bad. And so I think it's important that there's a system to sort of really evaluate and practically put things into place that help you be more aligned with your values, that there's not so much disconnect.
To your point, exactly. If you don't dig deep and figure out your own personal and excavate your own personal core values, how can you align with your company's?
Exactly.
How can the company expect you to? And how can you expect yourself to align and be in the right position in your job? Do your job the most efficiently, and at the same time, be the best version of you.
Yeah.
How do you do that if you don't excavate?
So there's 3 questions I like people to consider when they're trying to figure out their core values. And so like, maybe anyone listening, it's like, okay, what are some of my values? And I want you to think about, where do you spend a lot of your energy, time, and money? You know, those are, whether you realize it or not, and that may not be a good thing, or it may be a good thing.
People might not have trouble looking at this, but okay.
Right. I mean, you can kind of see what you're actually valuing versus what do you want to be valuing, and who's your heart and what you want to value. And so once you can come up with like some of those key things, the 3 questions are: does this value define me? Is this who I am when I'm at my best? And is this a filter I can use to make hard decisions? So if, let's say, so like, what's one of yours other than safety? Love. Okay. Do you feel like love defines who you are?
So much so.
Yeah. Yeah. And is that you when you're at your best?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And can you use that to make hard decisions?
Absolutely.
Right. And there's always going to be that side of us, for some of you watching, and you might refer to it as like the shadow work, or that part of you that you don't like, or whatever, when we're not at our best, that is going to go opposite of that. But when you create the self-awareness of how love is the core value that I'm going to choose in spite of how I feel at times, how do I use love to have this really hard conversation with someone right now? That might mean that you assume the best in the person, while still creating boundaries. That might mean that you choose something that is more in a loving response versus a hurtful response, or whatever it may be.
Absolutely.
But you want to at least be able to have a few behaviors that support that value, and with that, recognize behaviors that come up for you that are outside those values that you tend to fall into. So like for me, people-pleasing behavior, that might be a behavior that I notice I get in that goes actually against one of my core values. And we
I can completely relate.
Yeah. And so I think that we have to be honest with ourselves around our tendencies in both the helpful and unhelpful ways, and how do these support or not support the values that you're trying to live out.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree in that. In I can think of particular times in my life where I wasn't acting within my values, and I was so unfulfilled and unwhole and miserable, and I wasn't me.
Yeah.
And like I couldn't show up as me, and therefore all my relationships were different, and all my actions were different, and everything was off.
Right.
And when I don't act in love, when I act reactive or I act angry or I'm so off. It's just, it doesn't align with who I am.
Yeah.
So I fully understand that. And those are David said, those are great questions to ask. They're really good questions to
well,
ask.
and it's like looking at what are the warning signs that you're living outside of your values. And like I said, it could be people pleasing, it could be micromanaging, it could be pretending, it could be perfectionism. I mean, like those are those seemingly like they almost feel helpful, or they help you feel in control, or they help you, feel a certain way that seem strong or seem helpful, but they're actually going against what you really value, because that was maybe a way for you to stay safe before, or a way for you to be in control before, or things like that. And so not only is it important to look at what are the behaviors that align with your values, but the behaviors that you engage in, that I know I engage in, that go against your values, so that you can kind of call yourself out on your own bullshit when you need to.
Yeah, that's one of the harder things to do, I think, to have that self-awareness.
That means putting ego aside. That means being self-aware enough to do it.
So self-aware. And you probably see this all the time. Like, how self-aware do people think they are versus how self-aware they really are? I mean, I find it's like this. Like, it's like,
oh yeah,
it's so uneven. Like, people are like, oh my God, I totally know myself. And I'm like, you don't know yourself at all. Like, let's take a step back here. And then, you can show them through a different lens, and they're like, wait a minute. Yeah. And then as you do this, for people that are watching, as you do this, and as you excavate, and as you reclaim, and as you do all this part of the breath framework, right? Like, you will get to know your triggers. You will get to be more self-aware, but it does take work.
It does.
Like, I didn't, and I'm far from perfect, but I didn't get to where I am, and having the awareness that I have and trying to work these steps or this program all the time without doing the work. Right. Like the advice I give and the healing that I do for other people didn't just come to me from a book. Like, this is from going through it.
Yep, absolutely. Well, and so just to give people a perspective on the whole how self-aware are people actually. So 95% of our brain is all subconscious, long-term memory. What we're doing right now here in the present is only like 5% of our brain. So the more we do, in EMDR, there's a saying called the past is present. And and what gets wired together fires together. And we can be in past and not even realize it. We can be triggered. We can be operating in a way that's unhealthy and not be aware until it becomes aware. And that's where like coaching and therapy and doing, your own reflective work is so important, because once you bring the subconscious conscious, then you have something to work with, right? Then you can move forward. So many times we're so sick and tired of repeating the same patterns all the time. And I love the clients who walk into my office and they're like, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. Let's just dive in and do the work, because they're ready to
That's
confront.
Mandy. It's so funny that you're saying that. I love when people come open and ready and willing. I mean, not to say that like you have to, like you can show up however you show up and I will accept you and I will embrace you. Right. But like, you know what I mean when I say those people that come that are like, just tell me let's just do this. And you're like, yes, let's get to the meat of it.
Well, that usually comes from a place of being at rock bottom emotionally, though, and being like, I can't keep operating I can't keep continuing the same patterns, essentially, whether they're emotional patterns or behavioral patterns or relationship patterns or whatever it may be. And that's a prime example of things that are stored in the subconscious and in the past that haven't been healed yet in your brain. And, and so once there's reprocessing, once there's restoration of what happened in the past, and then your present changes, your filter change. I'm no longer operating out of the belief of I'm not good enough. I'm operating out of the belief of I'm enough as I am.
Mm-hmm.
So I know how to set boundaries now, and I know how to speak up for myself now. And I don't feel guilty when, blah, blah, blah happens or whatever. I can recognize a red flag now, but it takes you doing your own personal work to be able to bring those, with someone, to be able to bring what's subconscious into the conscious.
Yes. How much do you think self-worth comes into play when it comes to the people that come to you with this trauma? Where does that?
Oh my gosh. It's like all of it. I mean, not all of it, but I mean,
everything, right?
I mean, trauma shakes your sense of who you are as a person. It shakes up your identity, what you thought you once were, or the world once was. It's completely changed after trauma. And so so much of, because EMDR is so heavily focused on belief system, what do you believe about yourself because of this, is identity work. It is self-worth work. Because when you're secure within yourself, again, then you can't be shaken as much by external things.
It is very, very hard to have yourself. I call it the self-worth barometer. Like I look at it as like a cup being filled. Mm-hmm. It's really hard to have a full cup without doing the work. I mean, there's just too many things that have happened in our lives, too many traumatic experiences, too much shame that we all carry. Mm-hmm. Without doing any work, to have that self-worth. And self-worth is so the core of so much of who we are.
Yeah.
And affects everything that we do, all of our relationships, all of our actions and behaviors. I feel like I'm just constantly coming back to this self-worth thing.
Yeah. Clients. Well, I mean, and if you think about it, like, let's say you've been through experiences in life and it's really created a lot of insecurity. It's really jacked up how you feel about yourself, what you think about yourself, and all of that. So now your capacity to love yourself and to love others, let's say it's like that of, a Yeti mug. Okay. Like that's where it's at, because it's protected with all these layers because of all this trauma. As you heal and it becomes safe to expand, mm-hmm. you're able to love yourself and accept yourself more. And so your capacity to love you and to love others maybe is like now a bathtub size, eventually maybe it's a swimming pool size, and things like that. But, and as someone who used to not get this, because I was like, man, I love people way better than I love myself. But when I actually got the phrase, you can only love others to the extent in which you love yourself, mm-hmm. did I really get that when I started doing my own work around healing these negative beliefs, healing the trauma, and I continue to do that work. But as I do, and as I grow, my capacity to love myself and to love others just expands.
It's true. It's so true how that works, right? Like the more, so I was raised or I grew up on the knowledge that was given to me or put upon me, or the message that I received, let's say, was you don't put yourself, you don't do for you. You do for others.
Right.
You're selfish if you do for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And then the message has so shifted, obviously, because I learned about self-worth and how important self-care is and how important it is to turn the lens around and take a look at myself and look at the mirror and all these things.
Mm-hmm.
And what you said makes so much sense, because it's like the more that I appreciate who I am and show up authentically as me, the more love I can give to others and the more I can heal others.
Yeah.
And it's like reverse of what we were taught.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Well, because there's such a sense of false humility that's involved with the way in which we love ourselves. And I think for a lot of women in particular, there's a level of that selfish connected to it. And depending on where you grew up or the culture you grew up in, that can be seen as, arrogance, or seen as not being a good wife or a good mother or whatever, when there's too much focus on self. And that's all, it's just not true. And it's not helpful. It's like that. I mean, everyone's heard it. I was just flying on a plane again recently, and I, was reminded of this analogy that, when the plane's going down and the oxygen mask drops, they tell you to put on yourself first before the other person. And it's a common self-care analogy, but it's true. Like, the reality is that you're only responsible for your own well-being. And if you don't take care of that, and if you don't preserve your self-worth at all cost, then that's going to come at a cost to the people that you love.
And we hear that analogy, but like, my first instinct would never in a million trillion years would be to put mine on first. Mm-hmm. But I think about it every time I'm on a plane, right? Like, my first instinct would always be to my children.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
But I realized, like, what if I, can't finish them, and then what about me? And then we're all screwed, right? So like, I have to take care of me. And I'm learning that is not selfish, and that's a work in progress.
Which in practical day-to-day life might sound something like, mom needs 10 minutes, in the dark in her room. Yes. And we're going to start having boundaries around quiet time for these 10 minutes each day until they get it, or it might look like, saying no to something that you typically would say yes to, even with your kids, because now you're modeling self-care for them.
Yes.
Now you're modeling what it looks like to have an appropriate emotional reaction, how to, instead of yelling and screaming back at you, which is a normal human response, we know how to take time outs, and we don't give in to certain behaviors. And this is how we handle our anger or our emotions or our sadness or whatever. And so I think it's reframing for, especially a lot of parents, how modeling health for yourself actually is in your kids' long-term best interests.
You have to model the way. This is like what I preach about parenting. Like, if I don't do it, how could I ever expect my children to do it? And they watch and they hear and they learn from every single thing you do. I mean, I see myself in that.
Well, it's not being perfect at it. I tell parents all the time, like, I would rather you have this awful interaction, but model how to do an apology, how to extend forgiveness, and then you give each other a kiss and a hug, and what that looks like.
Yeah.
What that repair looks like.
So much so.
So it's not about perfection and being the perfect parent. It's about being the human parent that always operates out of love.
I have to tell you that I am the queen of that. Like, just behaving in a way and then being like, I should not have behaved that way. Mommy's sorry. And like, that's not what I would do again if I were to do it again. And I need them to see that, like, I will own it. I'm not going to deny it. I'm not going to blame anyone. I'm not going to point fingers, but like, I am far from perfect, and I don't expect them to be perfect either. They don't have to be perfect. Just own up, right? Take responsibility. Yeah. Be able to say, I really reacted poorly to that. Like, I should not have yelled right there. I did not, but like, and I love that. I love that you give that advice because it's so true. And when I, please don't get me wrong, when I say model the way, I do not mean to be perfect in any way. I mean to do the right thing. To just do the right thing. My internet keeps cutting out. I love and appreciate you both immensely. If I leave, it's because of that. Big hugs. Thanks, Ian. Thanks for hopping on. Appreciate that. He's such an awesome supporter. But yeah, I mean, we're just, you and I happen to be very, very aligned with all of this stuff. So that's partly why we work together. But also, you know, I admire you so much in what you're doing in the field and just who you are as a person. I just think you're a really incredible person.
Thank you, Annie. Likewise, right back at you.
Thank you. I love knowing you, and I've loved getting to know you. And like, you always bring value, just so anybody watching, like you bring tremendous value wherever you go. So just know that, because like that's from my heart and soul.
Thank you.
And I think you're really badass. I can't believe everything that you do. Like, talk about the perfect woman. Every guy's like drooling. Like, they're like, wait a minute. What she does? What? You listed like 20 amazing things that you do. Not that it matters. Like, what? I'm not saying like everything's about what a guy thinks, but like, I'm just saying like that's really cool. Like, self-care. Mandy knows who she is type shit.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's taken a lot for me to.
I get it.
Some bad relationships for me to be able to get serious about myself.
Buckle down. Listen, we all have trials and tribulations. We are sitting here together, doing this together, and we are able to heal people every day because of what we've been through. Yeah. So no one can take that away from us. No.
Well, so there's an ongoing joke with me and my colleague Rhonda, who started Mosaic with me, and you know, we've done life together. We go through all of the ups and the downs of life. Like, man, I lived with her and her husband for about 6 months when I was coming out of my marriage and like all this stuff. And whenever we go through really bad things in life and we're just like ugly crying together and like all of it, like the ongoing joke is, I'm just tired of being a better therapist. Because it's like... And it's like how we have to reframe it in our mind sometimes. It's like, yeah, I have a lot of education. I have a lot of certifications. I can do the clinical work, but what I feel like makes me a good therapist is my experiences.
I know. It's tough sometimes.
And so it's, you know, what we go through directly, you know, plays a purpose in the healing and helping of others. Yeah.
And like we are impacting souls every day. And that's pretty cool. Like, how could we possibly do that without this? Yeah, like you said, certifications are great. And clinical knowledge is awesome. And clinical experience is awesome. But like life experience, I think, kind of trumps everything. And that's a lot of pain. But, you know, we sit here together with having a lot of pain in our past, some in our present, but a lot of friggin' strength and courage too.
Right. That's right. Yeah, that gave me goosebumps. We need to like retweet that or something. I don't know.
You gotta retweet. Whoever's watching, retweet it. The language of Annie tonight. So listen, I'm gonna play the, do you have anything final you want to say to our guests, our audience? You said a lot of good stuff.
No, I'm super grateful. Thank you, Annie. I'm grateful for anyone who's been listening in and wants to spend, you know, an hour on Tuesday night with us.
Me too.
And yeah, I'm excited about the future. I'm excited about what's ahead. And I think there's just so much growth that's going to happen and healing that happens for people. And I'm just excited to be a part of it. I feel very much in alignment with this. And,
Me too.
And I love my LinkedIn community for sure. So thank you all for popping in.
Yes. Thank you, LinkedIn, Twitch, and YouTube. We had some people on all of them tonight. So,
awesome.
And a lot of people watch the replay later. I get more replays than I do current views. So like, thank you, replay watchers. Love you. Yeah. Love you, mean it. So here I go playing my little brand thing. Hang on. This is my favorite thing, sort of, until my pictures come on, then I get totally bright red. All right. Bye.
Breath framework. B, begin where you are. R, reclaim your power. E, excavate your core values. A, allow, not control. T, through, not around. And H, healing. The breath framework, a way of life.